Grant, you've made it back to the motherland, Vancouver, British Columbia. It was great seeing you last week. Great seeing Brian.
It was awesome, man. My legs are still a little sore riding my moose all the way back from California across the border up to Vancouver. It took a few days, but I'm recovering. I'm doing well. And as always, I mean, if anyone ever gets a chance to spend some time with Mason at Vertex Labs over in Oakland, what an amazing host. I'm gonna be working off the extra weight I gained here for a few weeks, I think.
Yeah, I think one remark that Grant made is that he never had any sensation other than full.
Zero hunger the whole time. It was actually refreshing coming back into Canada and feeling hungry again.
Right.
It was a treat. Yeah.
Well, allegedly that's what Americans do best, although this was less of a consequence of big indulgent meals. It was more of just trying to get all of the different Bay Area signature restaurants fit into a couple of days. And so in effort to do that, we took Grant to a lot of different places where he got
helping
to
the
enjoy,
economy, right?
Right, helping the local economy. He and Brian, one chicken burger at a time, which I always call a chicken sandwich, but I guess in Canada they refer to those as chicken burgers.
I'm probably the only guy that says it. It just feels right. Yeah.
Okay.
A burger with chicken. It was great.
God bless. God bless. Yeah. Well, I should say today, Grant, we're going to get back to another article that we happened to locate over the last few days that mentions what they call the best overdrive pedals for all budgets and styles. And we always find these types of articles interesting. Just as in last week, we were looking at switchers. I think the thing that we continually come back to is what qualifies the person writing the article to make the statements that they make. And that's not to say that it is not within their right as a person of the world to have an opinion on something. But when that opinion is broadcast to thousands, tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of guitar players through such magazines, such outlets as guitar.com, what responsibility do they have to ensure that that person actually has their finger on the pulse of what's going on and is not just giving opinions as anybody would have given an opinion before the internet existed in a bar on a Monday night, and I feel like this one unfortunately seems divorced in some ways from the reality of what's going on in the world of pedals. I feel confident in saying that, in that both you and Brian are building hundreds of pedal boards each year, if not more. I've built thousands of pedal boards in my lifetime, and I'm on the manufacturing side of things. And that's not to say that I know everything, but I feel a lot more confident in giving people recommendations based on that experience than being somebody who has just been in the world of pedals and been a collector or been a purchaser. I don't know if it says who, it just says it's by guitar.com. So we don't know, I guess that Mr. Guitar wrote this. It doesn't give a name. But let me just go through some of these picks here and you just kind of tell me, again, thinking of all budgets and styles. We have the MXR Duke of Tone, which is a collaboration with Analog Man. We have the Hudson Electronics Broadcast AP2 pedal. I believe that's the Ariel Posen pedal. We have the J Rocket HRM V2. We have, let's see, scrolling down for more of their picks. We have the 1981 Inventions LVL. We have the Warm Audio ODD, the full tone OCD replica. We have the Walrus Audio Fundamental series pedals, the ones that have those, like, they look like EQ sliders, but they're going horizontally instead of vertically. We have the Brown Amplification Carbon. We have the DoD 250 preamp and the Warm Audio Centavo, the Centaur replica. And lastly, they call this best big box overdrive, the Marshall Bluesbreaker reissue that's in the original style enclosure. And then at the end, they have sort of a little sentence, a little blurb that they write, and it says, why you can trust us. And maybe this plays back into some of our concerns kind of in the opening. It says, every year, Guitar.com reviews hundreds of new products, from the biggest new launches to cool boutique effects. And our expert guitar reviewers have hundreds of years of collective experience, having played everything from a bona fide Gibson 59 Les Pauls to the cheapest Squires and everything in between. This means that when you click on Guitar.com's buyer's guide, you're getting the benefit of all that experience to help you make the best buying decision for you. What's more, every guide written on Guitar.com was put together by guitar obsessives just like you. We understand what what products guitarists are excited about right now, and those are the products we look to highlight in our buyer's guide. Other websites might show you something because it has a big discount or a crazy low price, but you can trust that every product recommended to you by Guitar.com is something that we'd be happy to have on our rig. So they're giving some examples of why this should be trusted. I think that I don't know that I endorse that, because you can have been a fan of, you could have watched movies your whole life and just loved watching movies, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be a film critic. In fact, in some ways, I think that if you're talking to somebody who is a director or producer of a film and you're asking them about like what films they really like, I feel like in some ways that it's almost more credible because they're entrenched in the artistry of whatever that is. And it's fine to be a fan and it's fine to leave a review, but to me these are like reading comments on a YouTube video or something like that. Like they're just they seem very random. I don't even get some of these. What are your thoughts, Grant?
Yeah, I mean, I struggle even, especially, I think out of all of the pedal types, when someone asks me, which is very common in the context of a setup, like I feel like I need another overdrive because right now I just have a Boost and a TS9. What other overdrive should I get? It's kind of like asking like a friend in their local city, what restaurant should I go to tonight? Just tell me a good restaurant. And you don't know what type of cuisine they like. You don't know their budget. You don't know a whole bunch of factors that really you need to get a way more personalized to actually be able to recommend some of this stuff. And so that's where I find these articles, even let's say this article was brilliantly written as far as the recommendations were a wide scope of what was available by manufacturers today, and it covered a wide scope and different tastes. I think even still, reading an article to tell you what type of overdrive you need is really tricky to do. And I feel like for me, if someone asked me in the context of a setup, what overdrive should I get? I will tell them what I just told you. I find it really difficult to recommend because I know what I want to hear, but I don't know what you want to hear in your rig. I don't know how you attack your guitar. I can ask a whole bunch of different questions about what type of pickups you're using, what style guitars, what amps, but I still can't get in your head and hear what is a great tone as far as from your perspective. So I just find, especially in the overdrive section, I feel like that is one of the trickiest areas for me to recommend. And so, and I mean, even from what you're asking of what do I think about the article, it's one thing to recommend a single overdrive. And let's say it's I don't have any problems with any of the overdrives that they've recommended as pedals that are going to overdrive your signal and give you a sound. Like I don't have any issues. There's a lot of holes, but I think my biggest thing here is I can't recommend something that I know you're going to love, firstly. Secondly, I highly doubt they tried out these overdrives in the context of a rig. I haven't, I don't think they're going to be going into great detail here on what guitars and amps were used, which also is a huge factor when talking about tone shaping type pedals like an overdrive. And so I just feel like even before the article starts, there are a lot of hills that need to be climbed and a lot of areas that need to be addressed before recommending overdrives. And I know it feels like I'm nitpicking, but I feel like this is writing an article like this, you're starting at a disadvantage if you want it to be a really an article that's really going to help people make up their mind. Right now, you're just kind of putting a few products in front of our faces and telling us, trust me, this is going to be good. But I think for all of these, really, you need to actually try them out in your rig, in your context, and see how they perform at the end of the day. I don't think you can make a blind purchase on an overdrive pedal, and unless it's a part for part clone that you already had in the past, and maybe it's in a smaller package, you might be able to get closer in that regard because you already know the basics of how it sounds and reacts. But I just think this is a tricky one right from the get-go to be able to do a really good job on.
I just don't get how they can say that it covers every sound. Like, I don't see anything in here that would be an example of a high gain, like somebody who's playing metal.
Yep.
Where's their pedal?
Yep.
Like there's nothing in
pedal?
here. There's like nothing in here that all this stuff is actually fairly low gain for the most part. And so I feel like this appeals to somebody who maybe is into rock as far as like their level of gain. There's nothing above that here.
Yeah.
The irony too to me is that the pick for their what they call their overall pick is the Duke of Tone. But then their best big box pedal is the Bluesbreaker, which is the same style of circuit here. So they've got like duplicate Bluesbreaker style effects. They've created a category for large box effects. Is there like somebody that comes to you on a rig build and says like, and I need a couple of overdrives and then I need a large box effect?
Not even
here.
Once. Not a
like,
single
is that a
time.
category that somebody comes to you and says, yeah, like what's really missing on this rig? Like I got my delays, I got my reverbs, I got my boosts.
I've got too much space on my board.
I need a large box effect is what I need. I need a large box. So help me with that.
They do sound
Grant.
better. The bigger the box, the bigger the tone, I think is the saying in the industry.
The other thing I thought was kind of funny is they said best Dumble inspired overdrive, the Rocket HRM. And this is not a slight on Rocket. I'm good friends with Chris.
Great pedals.
Fantastic. They make wonderful pedals, unquestionably. The HRM is a version of a Dumble that is probably the most dissimilar to what most people identify as the Dumble overdrive sound. For example, most people, when they think of Dumble overdrive sounds, they're typically talking about Robin Ford, Larry Carlton, maybe Carlos Santana, and kind of the later Santana, like Shaman and newer records. The HRM is like a rare one-off. Most of them are EL 34s. It's not like the typical Dumble sound. It's more like a Marshall. And so to lump this in as Dumble inspired, as kind of like the quintessential Dumble sound, this is not that pedal. This is a pedal if you want kind of more of a Marshall-y thing, like what Dumble, how kind of Dumble created like a Marshall-y voiced overdrive sound, but again, still really rooted in Marshall. This is great. I don't think it's at all what you're looking for if you're interested in that Larry Carlton, Robin Ford thing. And in fact, if you wanted to get that product from Rocket, you'd get the Dude. If you wanted to get that product from us, you'd get the Ultraphonics. And again, most of these guys that are making Dumble effects, they've never even played one. They've never seen one. They've never played one. They have no idea. And if they have, maybe it's one, And so it's funny where we're kind of taking people's word for it that are vegans and trying to explain to you how a T-bone tastes. It's frivolous to me that there's a lot of those in terms of people that are making Dumble pedals that have never seen one, never been inside a Dumble, never done anything with them. In any case, I think that's a weird recommendation. I think that this is a great pedal, unquestionably. I don't think that if you're going for the Dumble sound of the classic Dumble sounds, this would be what you would go for, because it's a very specific style of Dumble that was pretty unusual. Not a lot of them made, but it's also not the classic Dumble sound. The one thing that I thought was cool here that they did is they did talk about two boutique companies with 1981 inventions and the Ariel Posen preamp. I thought those were kind of interesting, and probably you wouldn't see from a lot of reviews like this of sort of
going more
outlets
boutique
like this. Yeah, like I always think that his pedals look really cool. I've never played this pedal. I've only played the one that's more like the Rat. I forget which one that's called. Is that just the 1981?
It's just the DRV is the Rat.
DRV
for 1981.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Yeah. So that one I've played.
It's a more
Really
friendly
cool.
Rat. For anyone that thinks a Rat is a little too aggressive, the DRV would be like a preteen Rat. You know, it's a little toned down a little bit. It's not as aggressive as the full blown Rat out there. So I think the 1981 DRV is a great pedal as well. But
Have you played the LVL at all?
No, I haven't. I haven't played the LVL in person yet. No.
Do you know anything about this? For some reason, I thought it had some connection to the 250 preamp, but maybe I'm totally off with that.
I don't know too much about it, other than it's far removed from the Rat. More of I hate saying the word preamp, but it's not a high gain pedal. I think he touted it as a unique circuit, which whenever I see unique circuit, for me, I'm just like, oh, why?
Yeah,
Why'd you have to
unique
say
circuit
that?
in Overdrive is
I find it hard to believe.
There's not those two words now cannot really belong together.
I know,
Analog
and that's
Overdrive.
where I kind of almost, whenever I see it these days, it almost just discredits them even more, rather than just saying what it's based on. I'm just, as soon as I hear unique circuit, I kind of just keep scrolling because I see it as a huge marketing jargon thing, which, to be fair, I mean, every company needs to market their gear, and I myself included, and I understand that. But whenever I see unique circuit,
it wouldn't prevent me from using it if
No.
that's not true. But yeah, I agree. I think that there is like a certain amount of that we need to, or that everybody sort of prefaces their designs with, because it doesn't sound romantic to say, it's just
we copied a pedal.
Yeah. But I think in fairness to manufacturers, I think sometimes it could be related to lack of understanding of the broader scope of what's out there, and that, almost every style of creating distortion and overdrive has already been done in some format. And maybe sometimes you're combining things. So it's like, you're building your own pizza, and you say, well, I want mushrooms, and I want sausage, and I want pineapple, and I want bell peppers. And you're going to call that the Grant pizza, but it's kind of
unique pizza.
Right. Well, you're sort of picking from a menu of established things that, you might find at a pizza place, as far as like toppings that you could self-select to put on your pizza. And then that part's considered the ingenuity. Maybe, I think that might be how they're taking it. But for the most part, there really hasn't been anything that I've seen where it's utilizing a technology or a way of circuit design that is divorced from what we've already seen and been established. And that even goes for stuff that happened, in the 70s and 80s. A lot of that stuff was happening even before, and these were all, part of, the app notes that you would get from, National Semiconductors, or, your Aura article that you saw from Craig Anderton, or whoever it was that was publishing, tech articles in, various magazines, whether it be Guitar Player or more like technical electronics and audio related magazines. This stuff was out there for a long time. And I'll say that about even anything that we do there, especially in the analog domain. It's like we're still having to use the framework that's been established. And also, I think even if guitar players say that they want something really unique, a lot of the people that have tried really unique things have kind of been punished by the market because guitar players have a very narrow like sort of window of acceptable things as far as like what sounds good, because we're using all outdated technology. We're using, amplifier technology that's like from the 50s and 60s for the most part. Most of the tube amps are based around that style of circuit. All of our overdrive pedals are kind of rooted from stuff that came in the 70s and 80s, and there hasn't really been, other than digital effects, in the analog domain, there really hasn't been a lot of development as far as the core elements of the circuit. And guitar players want to kind of hear those sorts of things, and so in some ways, it's this circuitous thing that just keeps on feeding into itself. So I don't know that people can get mad at the pedal makers either, because they're also trying to deliver something that people want.
Well,
so
it needs to sell. You can't make a pedal to sell 5 units. You have to make a pedal that will have a little bit of mass appeal if you want to keep your company and keep your doors open. And I will say with that, I think the cool thing to see, even in the past few years, is the analog path or the audio path has relatively stayed unchanged. But the creative ways in which people use to control the parameters of the pedal has widely changed. And you can look at, what's come from Chase Bliss with the automaton, however you say it, and like all these unique ways of kind of controlling the digital elements of the pedal, which eventually then feeds down into the audio path. But the actual audio path is very hard to come up with a truly unique circuit and a truly unique sound that is going to be accepted. And so that's where, I think it's tricky. And I don't make overdrives. That is out of my wheelhouse. You obviously do. But I feel for people that make overdrives, trying to come up with a unique product and then having to market said product in a way that is not, disingenuous, or it is not false. Like, you have to tell the people what they have, what they can expect, and hopefully it's going to be something that resonates with people for a time. But I think it's tricky because there's only so many circuits you can make.
That's right. Well, I want to move on to another pick. They have Best Amp in a Box as the Warm Audio ODD, which is the full tone OCD replica. And the interesting thing is I don't know how much less or more this is than an actual OCD, but they make the OCD again, like with the Jackson Audio collaboration and all that stuff. Presumably you can get an OCD still. I don't know. I can look up here quickly what if there is actually a price difference. I'm just wondering why a full tone OCD, it's $179.99. Okay, and the Warm Audio is cheaper. It's $119.99. So there is a price difference between the two. Okay. So maybe this is just precipitated by the price difference. But although it doesn't say that, it says just Best Amp in a Box. Wondering why they didn't just go with the original here. Is it maybe they're anti full tone or something like that? And they're just like, okay, well, we're going to recommend this one that looks exactly like an OCD, has the same enclosure shape.
I'm curious if you can run it at 18. That's always something I liked with the OCD, is being able to run it at a higher voltage.
I don't see any indication on the front of it if it does, but let's take a look. I'm on Sweetwater's website, a fine retailer that also sells Vertex products. But let's see. Input, output. It says only 9 volts on the side.
Okay.
But maybe
for all
I
we
think
know,
on the
it's
full tone one
boosted.
it would. Yeah. Interesting. Oh, it does say it could take 18. It does in the manual. It just doesn't show it on the silk screening on the side. Yeah, but I think now that we're on the topic of guitar dealerships, this might be as good a time as any to talk about a couple of our sponsors. Another place you might be able to get a full tone OCD or the Warm Audio ODD, the great people over at the Guitar Sanctuary, formerly the employer of Brian Omilion. Now he's off on his own, but worked there for many years, built many pedalboards. And if you're interested in boutique gear, whether it's the full tone OCD, the ODD from Warm Audio, Vertex Effects, Goodwood audio products, that's available there at the Guitar Sanctuary. Head over to theguitarsanctuary.com. Check out what they have available. Plenty of great stuff. You can find everything that you need, whether you're talking about guitar gears, strings, boutique instruments, and amplifiers. They have it there. Go check them out. Also, our friends over at Neural DSP. I think I'll go out a limb here and say that as far as the boutique plugin world, as far as the amps go, they got to be at the top of the heap. Whether you want a Pliny plugin, you want Tosin Abasi, you want Corey Wong, or you want to head over to our Cortex Cloud. I just uploaded a brand new preset, the Jubu Smith clean preset that I created with Jubu when we had done a video interview together. It's based around the Roland Jazz Chorus. Sounds absolutely amazing. That's one of the cool things that you can do with the Quad Cortex. Create a listing of your favorite presets, share them with your community if you want. Also, super cool, they've discounted the price of the Quad Cortex as of 2024, so it's actually less than it's ever been, $1699.99. Great deal for what it is, and very soon you'll be able to use their plugins on your Quad Cortex. So if you've already purchased plugins or you're planning to purchase plugins, you're going to be able to import those into your Quad Cortex. And also any plugins that you are looking at you might want to buy, get 30% off using the coupon code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN. Use that coupon code at checkout, get 30% off any of the plugins of your choice. And this applies to anything that is 90 days or older. So any brand new releases for plugins, you can't get it on, but after 90 days, you'll be able to redeem it for the full 30% off. So check them out over at neuraldsp.com. All right. Grant, we have talked about some of these things as far as this article is concerned. I mean, the affordable one, I think that could go a lot of different ways. They added in the Walrus fundamental pedals. I feel like they released those almost as like their version of, let's say, like the JHS 3 series. I can't say that I saw them have the same impact that maybe those had. I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen one in person. I don't know that there's much to say there, but I don't have any dispute of that. They talked about the Carbon. I can't remember what's the Carbon. Is that the Bluesbreaker one? Or is that because it's one half? Yeah, it's a restrained take on a Marshall Bluesbreaker. They have like 3 Bluesbreakers here. They got the Duke of Tone. They have the actual Bluesbreaker as their big box choice. And then they have the Brown Amplification Carbon. And this isn't a commentary on any of those pedals. They're all great. I have no objections. It's just interesting that they basically have chose the same pedal. I don't know that I would say that the Bluesbreaker is definitely for like a rock or a blues player for sure. So genre is pretty specific. Circuit's kind of specific. I don't know, man. Like this just seems like a weird recommendation. Like if they could have, if I put out a list and I put 3 Tube Screamer style circuits, I would have a problem with that. I would be I would be totally obliterated. The 250 preamp, they say most versatile overdrive. It's got 2 knobs. I don't know. I'm not going to go and call that versatile. I mean, it sounds great. I have no problem with the DoD 250 preamp. It's got a very particular sound. It's fairly bright, and you can't really tame that down. That could work in front of some amps. The Klon pick. I don't. I mean, the Warm Audio looks like the shape of it. I don't know that I'd say it's like the best deal. I think if you're going to get the shape of the Klon, isn't the Centura less expensive than this? I think
the Centura. I think at least I haven't looked at the Centura in the last little while, but I know for ages, unless you were willing to build it yourself, it was very hard to get.
Really?
If you wanted it pre-built, yeah, there was at least direct. It was pretty hard to get.
It looks like it's $260. The Warm Audio is $179, so it's a little less. It's a little less money. So that could be part of why they're why.
The other thing
less.
with this, I mean, I guess if you're after the look of the Klon, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But there are so many part for part Klon clones and a lot of them are half the size. Like the circuit for the Klon is tiny. You don't need a huge pedal to fit the Klon. What you really need to fit for the Klon is just the 3 knobs and the foot switch. The circuit can kind of go wherever. And so I know one of the ones I was really impressed with, not that I've spent hours and hours with real Klons, but the thing that I was really impressed with was actually the J-Rocket version, the Archer.
Yeah,
they did a great Klon, and it's tiny and it fits anywhere. Like I think the J-Rocket one has been one of my favorites. If you don't need the enclosure, like if you need the Klon enclosure look, then obviously Centura, Centavo. There's a couple other ones out there, I think. But if you just want the sound, I don't know why you'd get one that is that big.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, that could have been in best big box overdrive.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I think we've ragged on these guys enough. I don't really understand. I don't really understand these.
I
picks,
never want these to be super
part.
negative either. Like I never want to come across as like, all right, let's see who we can rip down today. But I do think there were some holes in this, and like I was saying before, I mean, it's just really hard to recommend an overdrive if you're just going by specs and an article. It's much easier to recommend an overdrive if you're in the room with someone and you're like, all right, try this one out, see what you think. Just like a guitar, I would never buy a guitar based on someone's recommendation. I got to pick it up, I got to feel it, and at least know that I can get it set up to my specs. And I find this stuff really tricky from the get-go.
Well, and not to step into another controversial argument, but another article that was published recently on Guitar World was about PRS guitars, and I guess Paul Reed Smith has been going on these in-store tours and has been doing demonstrations and clinics for just regular people that want to come and learn more. And I saw from KDH's video that he made a commentary on it where this Tonewood debate is kind of resurfaced. I think it was around a few years ago, and there was guys like Jim Lill, who we've talked about, who did some videos kind of trying to isolate what part of the guitar is most important in terms of the sound, and kind of came to the pickup as being that thing. And I think, although I don't know that this was necessarily his intention, I think it certainly supported a lot of people that were just like, yeah, wood is unimportant as far as it relates to the tone. You could make a guitar body out of concrete, and it would be irrelevant to the way that the guitar sounds. So anyway, this debate has kind of resurfaced, and I think some of the examples that were shown was Paul Reed Smith at Chicago Music Exchange, and he was kind of rehashing the debate, and I kind of watched what KDH had posted, and I think it was all fairly straightforward, and he had a very I think kind of level-headed and pragmatic response to what Paul Reed Smith had said. I think also I watched some more of the Chicago Music Exchange one. He was like trying to shoot out a 64 Strat that, was off the shelf, or so it looked in the video, and then comparing it with a Silver Sky. And, whether you believe in the Tonewood debate or the effect that wood has on the sound, I don't know that that's the way to convince somebody that there is a difference, like pulling a guitar off a shelf and comparing two guitars, because you could pull two Silver Skies off the shelf and you'd probably get some differences in sound between the two guitars. And so I don't know that that's necessarily a comparison, but he was kind of using the 64 Strat as an illustration as to why, or to what they did, and they did this beautiful thing of refining the sound of the Strat, and listen to how much more refined the Silver Sky is than even just this vintage Fender guitar from 1964. I know you looked at this article a little bit too before we started speaking, but it kind of devolved into what a lot of people's criticism has been about PRS is that they have no soul, and that they're sort of too perfect. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on sort of firstly the Tonewood debate, and then as it relates to PRS, the soul or lack thereof in any type of instrument, and where how that should factor in for guitar players.
I mean, to be totally fair, I feel like I should not speak on the Tonewood debate because I haven't done my own tests on it to any degree that gives me any credibility to speak on it. I think from what I will say is I would buy an electric guitar mainly on how the neck and like body feels to actually pick up and play, maybe the weight, knowing that I can change out the pickups, knowing that I can get a good setup done. But I personally hate a big neck. By no means am I going for scalloped frets and this tiny little thin neck. So I'm not that guy either. But I'm not picking up baseball bat guitars. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I want. Like I need a pretty narrow C neck style thing, and that's what I love. And if I pick it up and it feels good, then I know I can tweak anything else. I will say though, I have picked up some guitars, let's say it's a Tele or even some PRSs. I pick them up and acoustically, there is a noticeable difference. Whether that translates to the amp is really the question. And I know that's the Tonewood kind of debate of into the amp. Is it going to make a big difference? Honestly, I don't know. I would be surprised, but I can't back that up with tests that I've personally done. I've just watched videos. In the Jim Lill video, I remember, I think it was you or Brian, probably yourself, that made me aware of that video. And I was fascinated by it, where he rips out everything, the body, and he like suspends strings in between a desk, like a workbench, and another like a 2x4 or something. And it sounds amazing. And so it was pretty incredible to watch that video, and at the very least challenge the perception of all of these factors we've been told are important. At the very least, you leave that video and like, maybe I need to do some of these tests with a little bit less of the rose-colored glasses that I've been wearing towards all these manufacturing jargons, and just get down to, does it sound good? Does it feel good in the amp? And trying to remove as many of those factors as possible. But I think for the Tonewood thing, I can't really comment, even though I kind of just did. I think for the other aspects, I think even with this article itself, my biggest thing here was really or not like around PRS and are they overproduced or do they not have any soul? I've owned a couple PRS guitars. And
They're
I've
like
had,
GMO guitars.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Where does it really come down to? I had a Brazilian 22. That's a guitar. It's not nothing else that I've had done. Okay. It had a Brazilian rosewood neck on it. It was a custom 22
I thought that was like
guitar.
the menu item that you got when you got your waxes. So
No.
Brazilian,
There's no Brazilians
number 22.
I don't have the pain threshold for that. But I really enjoyed my guitar. I really enjoyed my PRS. That one in particular, I had the longest, and it sounded great. I would say though that when I switched back to a Tele, like you can't even compare them. They're so different. I definitely gelled with the Tele more. I loved how simple it was. It didn't have all the switching options. It's just you get what you get. There's a tone knob and a pickup selector and obviously a volume, but it's just basic. It felt like it was just down to earth, simple. I loved that Tele before it got stolen. May she rest in peace. But I also like the PRS, you pick it up and instantly like, man, someone really cared about this instrument when they put it together. It's meticulous. It feels good. The action was awesome. The frets were beautifully leveled and there wasn't any like to say it doesn't have soul, I don't know. I think you pick it up and right away you know that someone really, really cared about each aspect of that instrument. I think soul has nothing to do with it. I think it's, do you like the sound that comes out of the guitar? Do you like the feel of the neck? I'm not big on, and you can help me out with the terminology here, Mason, with a neck that has this isn't the right term, like a poly finish on the back. What would that be when it actually has a lacquer on the back? I can't stand that because I have sweaty hands when I play. So I like a satin or a sanded neck like you'd get on a Tele. So I didn't like that aspect of it, but you can, even that, if you're willing to, you can sand the neck down and get down to the wood and put a nice, finish on it yourself if you wanted to.
Some tongue oil.
Yeah, I think PRS guitars are awesome. It's like asking, are you a Les Paul or a Strat person? It's not comparing which one has a soul. It's comparing which one gets you the results you're after and inspires you to keep picking it up and keep playing. And so I would absolutely disagree with the soul argument thing. I think they're well-built instruments for maybe a more... I haven't spent any time on the Silver Sky. The one I had with the Custom 22 would have been probably a slightly more modern sound. And I just really enjoyed going back to my Tele after playing that one for years. I like the change, but I love PRS guitars. I think they're incredible.
I think they're really well built. I think a lot of this is perception, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that like PRS will make very furniture-ish guitars. And I think that people who are accustomed to the vintage Strats and Teles and stuff like that will look at it and kind of be like, come on, like, this isn't a guitar, this is a collector's piece. And I think that they maybe discount the attention to detail and stuff like that. And certainly understand that not all PRSs are like that. Like I have a DGT, the Dave Grissom.
Here it comes on camera for those of you watching. For those of you listening, he's picking up a gold.
And it's very simple, right? Like I didn't get
which I love.
The furniture ones. Mine looks like a kind of like a Les Paul gold top. It does have a tremolo on it, so you're kind of getting some semblance of the Strat sound, I guess.
You've got the bird inlays.
It's got the bird inlays, and it's got a push pull on the kind of the back tone knob there, so you can split the coils here if you wanted to get more of a single coil sound. But this has been a really great guitar. Let's see, when did I get this one? This one was made in 2014. So
10 years old.
Yeah, it's a great guitar.
But even then, I mean, you pick up that guitar, and I'm not going to bash that around.
You played this guitar when you were here.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah. But you aren't going to bash around a PRS like you would a Tele or a Strat. I feel like a Tele and a Strat, for the most part, there's obviously exceptions. They're like the working guitar. And then the PRS you pick up in my mind like a fine wine. Like for special occasions, you'll bring that thing out. But I would still be extra careful with a PRS, even if I was touring or whatever, just because I have that respect for how much went into it. The cost associated with it is not small. Even like you just look at it, you look at the inlays, you look at the body itself, the craftsmanship, and I just can't be rough. I can't be rough on this guitar. And that's a me thing. That's not an everyone thing, but I would just approach the instrument differently than I would. Even picking up yours. I remember, not that I was abusing your instruments when you weren't looking, but as soon as I had to go pick up the PRS, I was just like, okay, I'm not going to bash this on anything. I'm not going to hit a desk corner.
I feel like the gold top just makes it feel like it's just, it already has like a patina from that color alone. Like I feel like, again, so much of this is perception. Like
totally.
Fender's a massive factory, even amongst the custom shop line. Like these are still machine made, or largely machine made.
Well, Fender in my mind is Ford. Like you see them everywhere. They're common. You can replace any part on Gibson, it's going to be okay.
And Gibson too, like these are mass production facilities, and they have to be. They have to be to produce that many guitars, and they have to be to ensure the quality. And I think that PRS just goes a step further than most of the big commercial brands at ensuring sort of continuity, because I would say, although I'm not a PRS fanatic, I have one PRS. I have the Dave Grissom, which, arguably is probably like their least, I'm not going to say it's not fancy, but it's like, mine is probably the most subdued as far as color choice is concerned. It doesn't have a lot of switches. It's kind of a very traditional setup that I think people just get the perception that it somehow, I don't know, that the precision means that it doesn't have, that there's not care, or the precision of the way that the instrument is made somehow means that it's losing sort of the individual personality of the instrument. And I would say that you want there to be a consistency. You want to go to a shop and pick up a PRS and know that you're going to be getting within a 5% margin one to the next as far as the performance, the feel, the finish, etc. It really sucks, for example, when you're looking for a Les Paul, and I've been in this situation where, I saved up the dough, I was looking for a Les Paul, and it took like a year to find a really good one because most of them were just not that good.
Like you had to pick it up and actually play it.
I was really committed to buying this guitar in person. So I would go to lots of different shops. I would play all of their kind of R7s, R8s, and R9s and R0s. So basically like between a late 50s Les Paul or a mid to late 50s Les Paul up through a 1960s Les Paul reissue, all custom shop. And there was a huge variability. Even within the same year, they were just, the weights were really different. The sounds are really different. They were completely different instruments. And so you could say, well, this one's really got soul because it's sort of like its deficiency is given an identity. But in some ways, like I would feel like it would be way cooler if you knew that if you went to a shop and you played 559 Les Pauls, that they kind of be within a fairly narrow margin from each other. And that's not the case at all. They would be like completely different guitars, completely dissimilar. So I don't know. In some ways, you got to put in a lot of time to find a good one. With this DGT, they kind of were all pretty much the same, and I think maybe there were some weight differences. I think I chose the lightest one that they had available, but I think that I think this place that I got it from had a couple of gold tops, and they had a couple of nicer flame top ones that were like sunburst and stuff like that. I wanted something pretty simple, but they all pretty much played the same, and sounded pretty close. And so I don't know, I guess it's a preferential thing, but I definitely have to go through a lot of Les Pauls or Gibson guitars to find a good one. Fenders, if I'm in person, I kind of know what I'm looking for the most part, and I think I can usually find a pretty good one. PRSs, I think it's probably the most consistent, out of the box, as far as if you know that you like it, you know that you're going to be able to find a good one pretty much anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's actually something else that stuck out about this article that I wanted to chat to you about.
Okay.
But before I get there, I wanted to go through our last two sponsors that make the podcast possible. The first one being Mono Creators. I really wanted to highlight their power supplies. They have a long, narrow, I like to think of it almost like a power strip or power bar, whatever you call those, kind of shape. And I think the reason I like these is that you can slot them anywhere underneath a pedal board and in odd places, maybe even on top of a pedal board. And I really like that. Obviously, it has all the modern specs of switch mode supply, really quiet, high current, switchable voltage. It has all that. But that unique shape, I think, is really a standout with the Mono Creators power supplies. They also do the gig bags, which I know, Mason, you've mentioned you've had yours for 10 years, and it's working just as new. Those things last forever. Cockroaches and mono bags will be the things that survive the apocalypse. And so they have a whole range of guitar bags, backpacks, and of course these power supplies and pedal boards that I wanted to highlight today. You can go to their website, monocreators.com, use the code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, and you can get 10% off of anything you can purchase on their website. So check them out at monocreators.com. Use the code Chairmen if you're into saving money. I also want to tell you guys about BTPA or Bestronix. They sell everything you need to build your pedal board, as far as plugs, cable, anchors, zip ties, DC connectors, whatever you need to build your rig. This is where you want to go. And we recently filmed a little bit of content when we were visiting over in Oakland. And the amount of times we said, go check out BTPA or go here to purchase these products that we're talking about. This is the stuff that we use to build rigs, both Brian, myself, and whenever Mason's building a rig, a lot of the stuff comes from BTPA. Again,
when I come out of retirement.
Exactly, which we're all hoping for. BTPA, you can use the code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS, and also save 10% between Mono, BTPA, and neural. Quick math, you're saving 50%. That's a lot of cash. A lot of cash we're talking about today. And so check out btpa.com and ask for Brad. Tell him the chairman sent you, and you will be able to get what you need from btpa.com. So back to the article, and this might be my interpretation. Tell me if I'm off base here. But I think one of the things that initially stood out to me, firstly, because it's in the title. Secondly, because later in the article, Paul Reed Smith, in one of these things, he was talking about an artist that basically judged PRS by the look and maybe the feel or marketing of PRS, the company, before even picking up a guitar. And the question was, is that fair? Is it fair to essentially judge a book by its cover when we're talking about guitar gear? And I guess to kind of give it away, I absolutely think that's fair, which is unfortunate for me being someone that sells products. I want people to actually try my stuff and then judge it. But I think a lot of the onus is on the company to structure their marketing and how they talk about their products, how they create and the look of their products. I think it's on the company to appeal to a certain part of the market and to know who that part of the market is. And my example that came to mind, which I had briefly mentioned to you, is Rickenbacker. I know there are diehard Rickenbacker fans. They think they are the most, the sexiest guitar that there is, and that, it's going to be Rickenbacker for them until the cows come home. I think those guitars are ugly as sin. I cannot stand them, and I would never, even if it was the best playing guitar in the world, I'm still picking a Tele, a PRS, a Gibson. I'm picking up those guitars first all day long, just because I can't stand the look of Rickenbacker guitars. I also am not a sunburst person, not a fan of the burst look on any guitar. And so there's a whole lot of things that Rickenbacker has going against him, in my specific opinion.
You can get a black Rickenbacker.
You could. You absolutely could. Exist. But when I think Rickenbacker, I think white pickguard, I think bright sunburst, and I think high action.
Kind of sunburst.
Yeah, like a cherry burst.
They're typically not great guitars. I think the only one that I've ever played that was playable, and this has been reported to me by many other players, is the Tom Petty one. I think is pretty good. Like if you're going Rickenbacker.
If you're a Rick fan. But
but you could go Rickenbacker bass. There's certainly a lot of precedent there. Rick James, if you want to play, Give It to Me Baby or Mary Jane or Super Freak. Yep. He always had this Rickenbacker bass, or Timothy B. Schmidt, I think had one. I think he from the Eagles. I think he played one, or at least had one. They're interesting guitars. I mean, I haven't wanted one because of the sound, because of the look, but I've wanted one because of the sound, because you can get those really great, like 60s jangly, like birds, type things. Kind of sounds cool. But yeah, it's very specialty.
But I think in my mind, the bigger question is it fair if you see a product, even today, we're talking about overdrives and PRS guitars. If you were to see that, I'm like, nah, I think that thing is ugly, or I think that looks beautiful, I have to have one. Both sides of that, but you've never actually, in the case of the overdrive, ran it through an amp and seen how it sounds. And in the case of the guitar,
well, it may not be fair, but I think that's the reality that you're contending with. People are, people can be
people buy with their eyes,
arbitrary, in what they like and what they don't like, and so I think it's fair that happens, and I think that you should expect that, as a manufacturer, that there's just going to be people that inherently don't like the look of your stuff, or the vibe isn't right, and that's why there's so many brands and there's other people to choose from. Like, it doesn't mean that being a guitar player makes it obligatory to have a PRS. Like, I don't think I had a PRS until 10 years ago. Well, I didn't have a PRS until 10 years ago, and I would say that for the most part, I don't usually I think their guitars are very consistent. I think that they sound good. There's nothing that I have against them. But I also only own one. I had another one for a time, which was a 513, which is a very versatile guitar, but it just didn't speak to me. But that may not have been anything to do with PRS. It could have just been that guitar,
probably no soul, right?
The sound,
Just
yeah.
lack of soul.
I could feel its lack of soul.
Yeah, it's just
yeah.
empty.
I don't think it was anything like that. It was just like I didn't really use it. I thought I would need this guitar more for kind of like a use case where I could only bring a single instrument, because it was very versatile and it had, the ability to have 3 single coils like a Strat, or have like 2 humbuckers in the neck and the bridge and a single coil in the middle. There's kind of all these different ways to do it, and I was like, it was cool and it sounded pretty good, but I just found like the Super Strat was just more practical for me. Like it was more comfortable and just seemed to work better. So I sold that guitar and I just used my Super Strat. But I don't know. I don't think there's anything wrong with PRS again, or having a preference for something, in discounting something based on the look. There's certain things that I'm sure that it across the spectrum of products that are out there in the marketplace, be it guitar products or I don't know, cars, that I just look at and I was like, I would never buy that. That just looks crazy to me, or whatever.
Snap judgments.
It's like, I think I mean, yeah, maybe it's not fair, but that's just the way the world works. So just get used to it.
And I think in my mind, in kind of summing up kind of the purpose of today's episode, I mean, for me, a big takeaway, whether it's overdrives or it's really interesting, even hearing your Les Paul example of wanting to go buy one. I think a lot of this stuff I personally believe, is a personal choice, as in it's really hard to make general, everybody is going to love this overdrive, or everyone that plays rock is going to love this guitar. I think you have to just be in the room with the products, ideally. That's not always possible. But if you can play the overdrives through your rig, or if you can play the guitar through an amp that is very similar to what you use at a music store, that's always going to be the best. And I would personally say, unless there's something where you have to purchase this thing right away for a gig on the weekend, or you have to make a quick decision, I would always rather take the time to go and play it in person, whether that's going to a local music store, or whatever it is, or the Guitar Sanctuary. Yeah. Like, go somewhere in person, whether it's guitars or overdrives especially. I would feel more comfortable buying digital delays or digital reverbs and judging those based on videos, because a lot of those these days you can tweak and manipulate all the sounds, but an analog overdrive and actual guitars, I really do need to be in the room ideally for those things and try them out in person, rather than reading an article with someone's opinion that doesn't really give you the foundations or the context of what you really need to know.
I still love the big box, though. I really hope somebody asks us. Like,
that is something.
I need a big box overdrive.
Yeah. What are the dimensions? All right. It fits the category of a big box. I can fit that on my board. Yeah. Why not? How's it sound? It's irrelevant. It's the size that matters. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. Well, so if you need to take up more space on your board, today's episode was for you.
Yes.
And I think we really ticked that box. Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off here. You were about to wrap us up in an elegant fashion.
No, I was wrapping us up, and I knew you needed to get that last piece in.
I did. It feels forgiven. I feel like the episode is complete.
I do think we had some interesting conversations. Certainly, I think the Tonewood thing and the soul of the guitar and all that stuff. I mean, I don't know. It's always an interesting thing. I've done some experiments. I haven't tried to replicate Jim Lill's experiment. I'll finish up by saying this. I haven't tried to replicate. It's a lot of effort. Yeah. And I think I mentioned this when we talked about it initially, is that will be the interesting thing, right? In the scientific method and doing experiments like this, part of how you qualify something as being relevant and accurate is that other people can replicate the study and come up with the same results. And I know it would be difficult for people to do that just based on sort of the depth that he went into. I can just say from some of the things that I've done, like I've tried refinishing guitars, and we did a video about stripping a guitar completely of a polyurethane finish and then repainting
with the Brazilian,
with a nitro.
The Brazilian approach, I believe.
Yeah, the stripping aspect was very Brazilian in nature, and it really changed the sound of the guitar. Now, that's not to say that it was better or worse, but it changed it. So I think that is, that went without saying, and that was unambiguous when listening back to it. It's hard for any of us to say how much any component of the guitar makes as far as the neck wood, the body wood, because you can't recreate the same guitar with every single element being the same and it just being, rosewood fingerboard. Like, or to do it would be detrimental to the instrument. You would have let's say a maple neck, and then you shave it down. You put a rosewood fingerboard on it or something like that. I don't know. I mean, that would be the only way I could really think of doing it, where you'd be using the same sort of neck, the same piece of wood. Or maybe it's like somebody has to go and cut, an ash body, 2 ash bodies from the same piece of wood, 2 maple necks from the same piece of wood, but make one of the, maple necks have a rosewood fingerboard. Obviously, that would be a different species of wood for the fingerboard, but like you'd be isolating the variable of the bodies being, or at least to the degree possible, the same piece of wood both the bodies are made from, the same piece of maple both the necks are made from. However, one is adding in this other variable of the rosewood fingerboard. That and let's say using the same tuners, same pickup height, same bridge, like all the other aspects the same. Maybe you could do a comparison there where you could get some semblance, but even variables of like how much finish was applied, and like all these other things, those
and then even the player,
too. I mean, let's just presume it's the same player. That to me might be a more indicative test to start to isolate variables on things. I think we can all agree that pickups can change the sound of an instrument, for better or worse. Even changing the pickup height can change the sound of an instrument on the same exact pickup,
Yeah.
I think that my suspicion is similar to what KDH said, where like all of them have little things that they probably impart to the sound, because the pickup is a microphone and it's picking up string vibration, but it's also picking up body vibration. Because a lot of these pickups, depending on how the pickup is mounted, and it could be mounted into the body, so you could be getting some resonance from that. There's all these different things that are going on. Probably the influence of that is somewhat minimized. But then there's also like this feedback loop with the player, where it's like you're feeling the instrument, you're feeling the vibrations, and you're feeling the sound coming back to you. And it's this huge feedback loop that's kind of happening in real time, with your own biofeedback with the instrument and the amplifier and the sound waves and all this stuff. I don't know. Does that happen if you use an acrylic guitar or a concrete guitar? I don't know. It doesn't sound very inspiring to play.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, maybe if you're a real anti-Tonewood disciple, maybe you're just bringing out the concrete Strat just to stick it to everybody. Yeah, the acrylic Strat to stick it to everybody. I don't know. But with that said, I think we will complete for today. We got to talk about 2 somewhat controversial articles, give our opinions, our thoughts, and maybe we're as unqualified to make such statements as the people that we tease. But
it's very possible.
We do love guitar.com. They've written some nice articles on our behalf, so we're not totally throwing them under the bus, although we're throwing them under the bus. But maybe they need to contact some of the chairmen, ask them to give some input. We would be happy to do that if they come across this podcast and put it into real life context, how it actually works on a pedal board and not in isolation. That's always important. So Grant, thank you for being here. Brian, we'll see you next week, and we'll see you all next week for a new episode. Until then,
see you guys.